Hello, welcome to the Program Review and Assessment video series. In Lesson 4, we will be discussing Step 3 of the curriculum mapping process, the communicated curriculum. This step involves an analysis of each course listed in the matrix to determine whether each program outcome is explicitly or implicitly reflected in the course outcomes on the syllabus. To accomplish Step 3, you will need to bring your syllabus to the workshop so that you can review them to examine the course outcomes in the context of the program outcomes in order to identify the course outcomes related to the given program outcome. And you will use professional judgment to determine the degree to which program outcomes are reflected among the course outcomes. This step helps us see how intentionally and deliberately faculty address program outcomes in their courses. Course syllabi often serve as an important tool to ensure, document, and demonstrate curriculum intentionality. The syllabi are a proxy for the designed curriculum. We must be sure that program outcomes are highlighted and stressed in both the overall program design and in each course. Tying course outcomes to program outcomes helps students recognize their involvement in a cohesive curriculum. But before we get into determining the explicit and implicit statements of intended outcomes, let's do a quick learning outcome checkup. You will need to review the student learning outcomes for each of your core courses to be sure that they are SMART, specific. They should be well-defined, clear, and should state exactly what will be accomplished. Measurable. You need to provide a benchmark or a target for students to determine the extent to which they have made the objective. Achievable. The objective should be within the grasp of the students, but also challenging. Your objective should be realistic. It should be reasonable given the available resources and time. Learning outcomes should neither be easy nor impossible to attain, but somewhere in between. And finally, time framed. Make sure to include a date by which each learning outcome will be completed. It's important to allow enough time to successfully implement the steps needed to achieve the objective, but not so much as to elicit procrastination. And remember, the verb is the center, the fulcrum, and the engine of a learning outcome statement. You want to avoid terms like understand or appreciate. And the learning outcomes are always student-centered rather than teacher-centered in that they describe what students will do, not what the instructor will teach. So in Step 3, you will review course outcomes in the context of program outcomes to determine whether the program outcomes are reflected in the course explicitly or implicitly. So let's take a minute to learn about what explicit and implicit statements are. An explicit statement of intended outcomes indicates that a program outcome is fully and directly expressed or referenced in a course syllabus. We will be using the letter X to denote this on our curriculum mapping instrument. Let's take a look at this example from sociology. In this example, the program outcome is directly reflected in the course outcome through a one-to-one relationship. The program outcome asks students to propose relationships, and the course outcome asks students to describe how to understand, which is in essence proposing relationships between the social scientists, the use of the scientific method in order to understand social phenomena. And using context clues, one can see how the observed phenomena is directly expressed in the course outcome, which specifies the type of phenomena as social. An implicit statement of intended outcome indicates that the program outcome is indirectly expressed or referenced in a course syllabus. We will be using the letter M to denote this on our curriculum mapping instrument. Now, implicit relationships are a little bit more difficult to discern, so we're going to take a look at two examples. The first example oversimplifies to give us a foundational understanding of what we are looking for in implicit statements. The second example should be more of what we will experience in assessing your program's communicated curriculum. So in this first example, we're going to take a look at the Spanish program. The program outcome denotes what the student should be able to do upon completion of the Spanish degree, which is speak Spanish at the advanced high level. However, if you are a student in Spanish 101, the foundation has yet to be developed for students to be able to speak at an advanced high level. The course outcome reflects that this is a step along the way to obtaining the program level objective. Now, one could argue that this is an explicit statement to some degree, and that's okay. There may be a degree of negotiation needed between department members to fully decide whether a program outcome is indirectly or directly reflected in the course. Using your best judgment as a professional in your field, you will assess how your content is scaffolded in cases like this. This is another example of an implicit relationship between program and course outcomes. In this example, the program outcome is very generic and not subject area specific. Produce text appropriate for their purposes and adhere to the labeled criteria. However, you will notice the course outcome focused is specific to the aspects of the discipline of history. If you observe the verb in the course outcome, discuss the evolution, you will see that there is a direct correlation to the verb in the program outcome, produce text. We all know that discussion can happen in written or oral form, so this tells us that our outcomes are definitely aligned. However, because the course outcome is program or content specific, and the program outcome is generalized, meaning it could possibly be used in an outcome for another program besides history, then that tells you that an implicit relationship exists. To accomplish step 3, you will need to reference the curriculum map, faculty handbook, step 3, communicated curriculum. Then use that learning outcome checklist and look over the learning outcomes of your core courses and make sure that they are SMART learning outcomes. If needed, make changes to the course learning outcomes and make sure to document any of those changes. Then you will go through each syllabus of your core courses and review them to examine the course outcomes in the context of your program outcomes. Finally, you will fill out the first subcolumn, outcome statement, for each program learning outcome. This concludes Lesson 4, covering Step 3, Communicated Curriculum. In the next lesson, we will discuss Step 4, the enacted curriculum.